Hey, what's up? It's Brian here, and in this video I'm going to share another powerful quote from the book Life Lessons. And this quote is about not really seeking approval or validation from other people and developing your own agency too. So I'm going to go right to the quote on page 107, and comment down below your thoughts too on the quote, or just another perspective that you have too. So the bottom of 107 to 108. The psychology of guilt is rooted in self-judgment, the sense that we have done something wrong. It is anger turned inward, arising when we violate our belief systems. Much of this time, this unhappy self-judgment is rooted in what we were taught as children. Our guilt so often comes from our childhood because we were raised to be prostitutes. This sounds harsh, but it's true. Obviously, in using the word prostitute, I'm talking about how as children we symbolically sell ourselves for the affection of others. We are usually taught to be good little boys and girls, tending to the wishes of others rather than forming strong identities for ourselves. We're not really encouraged to be independent or interdependent. We're trained to be codependent, making others' needs and lives important and neglecting our own. It is not a conscious choice. Often we don't know how to meet our needs for our own happiness. One clear symptom of this codependency is an inability to say no. We're taught to please others by agreeing to the request. Many parents are unhappy when their children say no. In fact, it's wonderful when children learn to say no at the appropriate times. We all should learn to say no early, loud, and clear. So I think this was great insight, and insight that I'm definitely going to keep in the back of my mind as I'm going about parenting too. And I was just thinking about the difference in how a child develops with a parent that encourages that child to have the agency to say no versus a child that doesn't feel any sort of space to say no in any situation, right? So I really thought about that, like the difference in those two scenarios. And I just think that you really have to encourage choice with your children at different points in time. I'm not saying in every single situation, but like if my 2-year-old says no to me saying, do you want to read a book? I'm not going to be forcing him to read a book because there's other activities to do to foster his self-development, right? So I think that's really important to keep in mind as you go about parenting. And I think it's normal to a certain extent for a young child to be a people pleaser or a prostitute, as the book alludes to, like wanting attention from their parents and not really maybe prioritizing what they really want to do, but they're really just doing something because they want attention or something like that. That's normal to a certain extent, of course. But I think as children grow up, they should gradually become more independent, and they should prioritize pleasing themselves and their own mental health, their own desires over other people's desires, right? So I think this is really important too for when children become teenagers too, because a lot of the quote unquote bad behaviors that teenagers do, when you talk about being lazy in school, being disrespectful to people, even something more severe like drugs and just doing the wrong thing, a lot of that is just from negative influences from their peers, right? Being around the wrong crowd, all of that sort of stuff. And a lot of that stems from not being confident in your own desires, not prioritizing yourself, being afraid to say no, right? So I think that's really important to tackle that at an early age. Create spaces for your child to say no in different situations and also not feel guilty about it, right? Because if someone can't really say no when they're 13, 14, 15, they're going to talk to their friend every single time the friend wants to talk to them during class instead of focusing on the material, right? When their friend is encouraging them to bully someone, they're going to do it because they don't have the power to say no. They don't have that habit built in. They just say yes. They're a people pleaser, right? You don't want your child to be like that. So I think you really have to be intentional as a parent to foster that agency in your children to say no at the appropriate times. So I really think that this is a great message for you individually to really be conscious of what your own desires are and prioritize your mental health and prioritize what you really want to do. And don't just say yes to something when deep down you don't want to do it. And if you're a parent out there, encourage your child to know when to say yes or no depending on the situation at hand. Know how to say no.